In order to transition for the developing countries, we're now discussing transitioning process for developing countries into green economy. Developing countries would not be able to accomplish transitioning processes without the support from the global economy, without the support from the advanced countries in terms of transfer of technology, in terms of funding resources, in terms of trade-induced technology transfer, in terms of role of private investment that could help to bring with them not only investment funds, but also the marketing network that we are seeing, the so-called value chain at the moment. So here, it's absolutely not the case that we are seeing decoupling. In fact, what we are seeing, and I am seeing this more every day, that the way the economies around the world will become more and more globalized in a way, the interdependence is increasing and not being reduced. The issue is that with increasing globalization, poor countries may be able to cushion themselves more because they have been accumulating more reserves, because their banking system has become more solid. This is the kind of immunity that they are going to have, but not the kind of decoupling that we are seeing. So I would like to conclude by saying that with the celebration of non-aligned movement of 50 years, with advance and emerging of the European countries into a new generation of globalization that we are seeing, we should not become complacent that these countries can take over the kind of joint burden around the world. For example, if you look at China as an example, China is the second largest economy in the world, but the size of Chinese economy with more than 1 billion people is only 1/3 of the U.S. economy. It's only 1/3 of the U.S. economy. And if you compare the income per capita of China with the United States, it's only 1/10 and less than 1/10. So the talks about China's being given the burden of trying to rescue, for example, European economies and things like that, are just loose talks. How can this happen when people who are still so much encumbered by poverty level, inequalities, environmental degradation, jobs creation need and everything, will have to support someone who is much taller and bigger? So I think this is what is being seen at the moment, that the sharing of burden will have to come. But whether the rise of the South can overcome the dropping out of the advanced countries in sharing all this burden is not really something that we can really accept on the face value. It's not going to happen that way. We're not going to have the kind of global recovery that is going to be substantiated by the lack of some of the engines, and some of the engines from the South moving forward in the fourth gear. So this is not going to be the case. And granted that all these pending problems and issues of the lack of inclusiveness in growth, until all these are resolved, we cannot see the kind of the full accomplishment of the emerging countries' economies. Secondly, we are seeing the rise of the so-called groupings of countries, like so-called the BRICS. We've been hearing a lot about the BRICS, sort of a new category of countries being created in the minds of the bankers. And today I've been told that we are seeing a new group which is called civet. You know, civet is the name of a cat in China, civet. Civet is a very tasty cat. It's not the normal cat we see in towns, but these are wild cats. Civet. But this is a new group of countries which is called civet, and the civet group includes Colombia for the C, I is Indonesia, V is Vietnam, E is Egypt, T is Turkey, and S is South Africa. Can you see the diversity of all this group of countries? And the BRIC is Brazil, Russia, India, China. What are they? What kind of similarities they have being grouped into a BRIC or civets? They're all heterogeneous economies. They have very little in common except for one thing. They are countries that are slated by the investment bankers to be high growth economies. And you know why investment bankers and bankers are trying? I'm very, very open with this kind of criticism, because it hurts the way people are distracted from looking into the real development issues in all these countries, because they are camouflaged by the kind of growth perspective. All these countries are going to be this large, that large in the next couple of years. And all these are driven by the need for investment banks to float new funds. So to be able to launch new funds, of course there must be some hype in marketing all these countries. Like when they regroup the subprime mortgages, you remember just the recent past? When they regroup the low-quality subprime mortgages into the collateralized debt obligations to look something very sophisticated with no one asking any questions about the quality of the underlying assets. I'm not saying that these are low-quality debts, but these are countries that are being hyped by investment bankers. For the CIVIT, BRIC was created by Goldman Sachs. This is not a secret. BRICS is created by Goldman Sachs. CIVIT is now being created by a competitor to Goldman Sachs, which is called HSBC. So this is not our concoction. We don't subscribe to this kind of categorization, which actually, I said again, distract attention of people away from the real development strategy and issues inside all these countries. You look at CIVIT, Colombia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Egypt, Turkey, and South Africa, and you tell me that they are countries that are already coming out of their status, so much so that they could be hyped as the next generation of countries that would emerge, that would already emerge. The fact is that HSBC is trying to launch an investment for all these countries, and they are doing this. So again, my conclusion is that all these countries, I name them all because they are announced in the press under the negotiation which is going on at the World Trade Organization. One of the reasons for the impasse is the fact that while negotiations are as yet uncompleted and the agenda has been determined from the Doha launch of the round, different requirements and demands are being put up, particularly with regard to the emerging countries, with the reason that after 10 years things have changed. So we have to shift the goalposts. And so these emerging countries being so-called emerged, this is not our term. This is not a UN term, emerging. Our term is developing. But emerging is being used as those countries that are supposed to be emerging or have already emerged, so much so that they should be made to pay more in terms of negotiations. And this is something which I think is distorting the picture. You cannot keep shifting the goalposts coming out of Doha, launch of the round, while we have the round still unfinished. This is not going to help in breaking through the impasse. And this is not going to help in the way that we are misleading the way we can share as partnership in development, the kind of burden is coming. Because of food insecurity, financial shadow banking, reforms that we need, and the need to do the green economy thing and transitioning into green economy. What we are looking at the moment is to try to promote the kind of South-South cooperation that could be supported by the non-aligned movement in a way that we have the so-called developmental regionalism. Regionalism that addresses itself not only in terms of trade opening, but in terms of having development strategy. Joint corporations in a way that global or regional public goods like water, like energy, like environment, like financial stability can be jointly tackled by a group of countries living next door to each other in a collective manner. So, sorry to be again saying so many things at the same time to introduce the session, but I thought in celebrating this occasion, we need to be realistic. We need to accept the accomplishments, but at the same time to realize that we're not there yet. Thank you very much.